Hey everyone, welcome back to Mason Woodshop. Now becoming more Mason Workshop as my interests have expanded beyond just woodworking into areas that are satisfied by tools like the xTool S1 laser engraver and cutter. And in this video, I want to talk a lot about this tool and how I've been using it the last few months, but also why I think that this is the ultimate beginner setup for anybody looking to get into laser cutting and laser engraving. This tool has been an absolute pleasure to use, and a big part of that is the xTool XCS or xTool Creative Space software, which makes it so easy to work with the wide variety of material that I have collected over the last few months. And it's been so much fun going from glass to slate to metal to acrylic and wood. It's been so much fun playing around with those tools, and I think something like this can just be so much fun for anybody to play around with. And in this video, I want to share kind of how I have been using it and how I've expanded the function of this tool over the last few months. Now, in the essence of full disclosure, I did want to say that xTool did provide the S1 as well as a few of the accessories free of charge for review purposes. However, they're not reviewing the content of this video or forcing me to say anything about the xTool S1 or those accessories. So without further ado, let me share kind of how I've expanded this over the last few months. So the riser base is an accessory that raises up the entire unit by about 100 millimeters and has the same fit and finish as the xTool S1. You can get it in white as well if you do have the white laser, and really high quality, packaged really well, just like anything from xTool. Nice closed cell foam, so nothing is going to be damaged in that. So like I said, raised about 100 millimeters. It does have kind of these nice pads that you put on to help prevent any light from leaking through, but if you are using an accessory like the conveyor belt, they do provide a set of safety glasses just for any of the laser beam that could leak out, and so you want to make sure your eyes are protected. But the neat thing about this is that it does accommodate the tray. So right now I have it in the highest position. I do have the honeycomb on top of that, so when I'm working with most material, that's how I use it. But you can lower the tray and accommodate much thicker material. So I have done some 2-inch thick cutting boards, so it's nice to be able to position the tray down and do my engraving on those cutting boards that way. Now, this also allows you to accommodate things like the rotary attachment, which I do have. However, I have not used it yet, so I won't be talking about it in this video. Stay tuned for a future video on the rotary attachment, as well as the conveyor feeder, which can feed, I think, material up to almost 10 feet through the xTool S1. So really quite cool. And I think that this really is a must-have accessory when it comes to kind of making sure that your unit is future-proof's a bad word, but expandable with other accessories that you likely do want to try, because the rotary attachment does look really cool. Just something that does have a lot of parts in it, and I will have to figure out how to use that in the future. But really happy that I got the riser base, and I'd highly recommend that you do the same. So next up, I want to talk about the smoke purifier right here. So this is the smoke purifier from xTool, and I think that it is an absolute must if you are using the xTool S1 or any of their other lasers in an enclosed space. So what this does is it hooks up to the exhaust of the xTool S1, so the fan still runs on the unit. However, this smoke purifier really does a great job at sucking out all the fumes and all the smoke and that sort of thing from it. So not only do I notice that there's clean air coming out of the smoke purifier, I also notice that when I lift the cover on the xTool S1 itself after finishing a cutting project of wood, which is typically the most smelly, that there's very little kind of residual smoke in there if you're letting this run long enough. So I do think that this is a must-have if you are in an enclosed space, and it just has a simple switch on the side and then dial here where you can change the intensity, and it is very quiet. It's I can even kind of feel the air right now with that, but it stays under 55 decibels. Does a great job at cleaning. It's a 3-stage air filter. And what I have found kind of in my use case is that if I'm doing any sort of engraving, whether it's wood, metal, plastic, doesn't matter, that there are no fumes coming out of the exhaust of the purifier. So I can smell nothing coming out of this compared to if I was just using the exhaust fan on that. Now, if I am cutting wood, I think that that is where there can be a little bit of residual smell even coming through the purifier. So if I put my nose right up to the exhaust hose, you can smell it a little bit, but I would say that 99% of the smell is gone, but there is that little bit there. So if I'm doing a prolonged cut with wood, I will typically just open the door, throw the exhaust hose from the purifier out there just so I get nothing in the shop. So I do think that this is a great addition, and I think it is really what makes the xTool S1 not just the ultimate beginner laser and these accessories working to be the ultimate beginner setup, but it also makes it one of the safest setups. So I highly recommend that you do consider the xTool smoke purifier if you are going with the X1 and you are in an enclosed space. Okay, so now let's talk about the 2-watt laser. So this is a great complement to the 20-watt. I think the best complement to the 40-watt laser, which I'd probably recommend that most users go with the 40-watt plus 2-watt combo, just to have the most power when it comes to cutting, and then the fine detail engraving of the 2-watt. So this uses a infrared laser instead of the diode laser of the other one, and it is a you'll see 1064 on there, so 1064 nanometer wavelength, and we will set the depth. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing an engrave on raw stainless steel. And what is super cool about this is that you don't have to use any marking spray like you would with a diode laser. So let's first of all set the distance. And this is one of the best things of the xTool S1, and I would highly recommend that you check out my other videos on kind of the basics of the xTool S1. So I'm not going to be going through the pinpointing mechanism and all that kind of stuff in this video. Instead, I'm going to be showcasing the power of the 2-watt. So now I'm going to just mark the circle here, and we will start to engrave. Okay, so we've got it all marked. We're going to close the lid. We're going to send from the software to the laser, and let's go. So we do have the purifier on. Let me just zoom in here. So you probably won't be picking up too much on the video, but I can see from the side here that it is doing a great job engraving. So let's let this run its course. This project is about 1 minute and 45 seconds overall. Okay, so it's all done. Push it back. And sometimes metal can be a bit hot when you are taking it out, so be careful with that. And let's just wipe it off with a cloth there. And I hope this comes up on video, but really, really clean. I didn't perfectly center it, but it's pretty close. And just like an actual engrave on there. And let me grab a couple of other pieces just to kind of show you how this is different than using a marking spray. Yeah, so here we have 2 golf ball markers that I made with my logo on it. The one right here using the 2-watt laser, and this one right here using the 20-watt laser with this black metal marking spray for lasers, which is like a white spray that you put on, and then it basically like etches onto that. So it is kind of nice with that black on there, but there's just something so much more premium about the actual engrave on here. And again, I don't know if it's going to show up on video with this one, but the 2-watt laser, which is this one right here, it's a finer engrave than the 20-watt. So a little more detail on the 2-watt. And I don't think it's going to show up on video, but I did want to share the difference there. Another difference that I did want to share is with these metal business cards. So these are just these really thin metal business cards that are really quite nice, and they're very inexpensive. But here we have the 20-watt laser, and what you'll see here is like pretty good detail, like more than sufficient kind of for what I need. And it's like the metallic, like the engrave is just kind of like a little more metallic-y, which is kind of nice. Whereas the 2-watt, and this is just where like the different wavelengths and the way it reacts with material is totally different. It's basically white on the black metal. So like it still feels textured. So I don't know how that reaction happens. And like this, it's a really fine white too. And you'll see kind of just like the precision of the 2-watt laser is a little more precise, but it's always kind of funny when you're testing different material and it comes out to be a different color. Another example of that is with this black acrylic. So this was cut out with the 20-watt laser, so it is awesome being able to cut black acrylic and other kind of opaque acrylic with the 20-watt laser. Don't try clear, it's not going to work with a diode laser. And the engrave on this, which is nicely textured, was with the 20-watt laser. So you see it's kind of like a medium gray engrave on this black acrylic. But then I did an engrave with the 2-watt laser, And it's a much lighter gray, not white, like not quite like it was on the metal business card, but it's a much lighter engrave on here and a little finer with the detail, which is always kind of nice. So it's not necessarily better, it's just different. And it's something that you should practice on different materials to just kind of see if you want to use the 20 watt or 40 watt or the 2 watt laser. So I just want to talk about these, kind of how the 2 watt and the 20 watt differ on these slate coasters. And actually, before I do that, I just wanted to highlight the difference in kind of an unfinished. So this is a slate coaster that was engraved. Looks awesome right off the laser with no coating. But what I've started doing, you'll see kind of the shine on that in some light, is I've started to just use this really simple, just crystal clear lacquer from Watco. So probably any lacquer would work, but it kind of gives it just like that nice finish. It brings out some of the texture of the slate a little more, and it does add some durability to it as well. So I have noticed, especially with like my parents, I gave them a lot of raw coasters right away, and they do start to wear, like if you're putting glass on it and that sort of thing. So it can wear a little bit, still looks great. But this with the lacquer finish is a little bit more durable. But on that note of a lacquer finish, here's something that's absolutely fascinating. So one of these was from the 20 watt laser, and one of them was from the 2 watt laser. So right here, this was the 20 watt laser. And I'd say that when it came to etching on slate, the 20 watt laser is probably the best. It's going to give you really good detail, not as good as the 2 watt, but it's going to give you very good detail. And it's kind of a really nice lighter gray on the slate. So something that works really well. Now these both have the lacquer finish, but the 2 watt, it gets a little harder to see. So it's a very dark gray on the slate, but what's interesting, I don't have an example right now, but is that right off the laser, the 2 watt looked way cooler than the 20 watt. So it was kind of like a bluish, lightish gray, or like medium gray on the slate, which looked absolutely awesome on the raw slate. But once I put the lacquer on it, which I would do all the time now, it is just much harder to see the logo. So it's not something that I'll probably use often, but if I do have a client that really kind of wants this look, I can absolutely do it with the 2 watt laser. But I think more often than not, the 20 watt laser with the lacquer finish is going to be my go-to with slate. All right, so now I want to talk a little bit about all the materials that you see out here right now. And I won't have examples for all of them, but I want to give you some small business ideas, as well as kind of share where I get a lot of the material that I use in my laser cutting and laser engraving. I'll put a number of links in the description below as well. So first off, I think that wood is kind of where everybody begins. It's so much fun being able to both engrave and cut through wood. So we have some 1/8 of an inch or 3mm, and then we also have some thicker 6mm plywood, so 1/4 inch plywood, which is really fun. It's a little more stable, gives you a nice thicker material, but more often than not, the 3mm will be sufficient. And so these ones are kind of like your plain basswood, but then you can also get variety packs. So this is actually a pack from xTool, and I think that's something I want to highlight, is that xTool has an amazing library of materials, not just selling the materials, but then also in the xTool Creative Space software, you can basically select the material that you're cutting and it will do it flawlessly because it knows the settings for your specific laser. So here we have just like a variety of different plywood that was from xTool, and their prices are pretty fair. So it might be a little bit more than some of the discount stuff you get from Amazon. The one thing I'll highlight with xTool is the quality of the material is leaps and bounds beyond anything else that I had experienced. So definitely make sure you check them out, especially if you have an xTool laser. All right, so now let's talk about the slate coasters. And so I typically will use square or circular ones, and I have made hundreds of these. So primarily for friends and families, as I've kind of gotten used to the laser, doing batch processing on the laser, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. But these are really cool, great gifts. Also from a small business perspective, and talking to a few people that do sell these, you could basically sell a custom one for maybe $10 each or $30 for a set of 4. A lot of people want sets of coasters. So being able to position it as an individual price at a bit of an inflated rate, and then kind of that bulk price if people want more. And also if you were doing like a themed craft show, if it was a Christmas show or something like that, you could have a lot of these ready to go with kind of general things, and then you can do custom for a little bit more money. So slate coasters are has been kind of my main thing right now. Also, just kind of on the coaster side of things, we also have glass. Now, glass with a diode laser, they aren't really a good pair, but you'll see that this is actually etched extremely well. And the way that I did that was by painting it with tempera paint. Tempera paint, tempera. But yeah, just putting that black paint on, doing a couple coats of it, and doing it on the back and then mirroring your image. So it's like the front is totally flat and the back is what is etched. But something like that, it looks awesome. And I've tried etching with some larger glass, and it works really well. So definitely keep that in mind. The other thing from a coaster perspective is that you can use things like this. So this is cork, and you can cut this with the laser. It's got a sticky back. And then if you were doing something on acrylic, you could basically cut out an exact, just slightly shrunk down version of the cork for that for the backing of something like this. And then all of a sudden you have an acrylic coaster. So really cool being able to do that. Now talk about acrylic. So this is a material pack that I did get from xTool. So it has a wide variety of acrylic, and it actually came with these little keys or little samples showing the types of acrylic that are in here for the S1. So you'll see a lot of opaque acrylic that is compatible with the S1. So it's been awesome to get that pack. Really fun to work with acrylic. It's not the cheapest material by any means, but really quite good. And then I also have purchased larger sheets of black acrylic. I won't pull them out, but large black opaque acrylic, because that's kind of how I've done most of my work so far, is on this kind of identical material. And so I buy those from Amazon. So really quite happy though with the xTool, but then also it is possible to buy it from other sources as well. So moving along, we have these colored pieces of hardboard. So I think that, I don't know if it's like vinyl or something on the outside, but a variety of colors, and these were from xTool as well, but really fun to work with. So I want to be able to do some like layered things for my daughter. And then also if you're doing like the map cutouts, which I've done a number of kind of the streets and all that sort of thing. I don't have any examples on hand right now, but being able to layer that over the blue, which is going to signal the water and that sort of thing, is really quite cool. And just a neat variety of colors in here. Kind of for so many different crafting options. So again, it is really cool that xTool sells so much of this material, and that the material that they sell is of really high quality. Moving along, so they do have like tumblers and that sort of things, which you can engrave with tools like the Rotary Attachment 2 Pro or RA2 Pro, which I will highlight in a future video. But here we have a collection of kind of like small items. So we have like the golf ball markers that I use. So I buy these on Amazon. I'll try to remember to leave a link in the description below. These have been a hit with a lot of people. Little jewelry packs. So these are like little hearts of variety of colors. So there's like silver, gold, rose gold in there, and reasonably priced from xTool. Even things like this one that we just did. And it's a golf ball divot repair with a ball marker on it. So for a couple bucks on, I think it was AliExpress that I got this, but really quite a nice gift item. What else do we have in here? We've got the metal business cards and yeah, some more jewelry samples that came with the 2-watt laser. In the top drawer, we have all my blanks for keychains, and keychains are something that, like if you have friends or family visiting and they just want a quick keychain, being able to do those. I've got all these little attachments depending on how people want to attach it to their various things. And just kind of here are a few examples. So, and I generally try to write like the material on here if it's not something that is by default in the Creative Space or Creative Suite software. Creative Space, that's what it's called. So like I did this side right here, and it started to like react a little bit with some of the oils in the wood. So that one wasn't great. But then this side, other than the centering, turned out really quite well. And so I put 30%, 80 millimeters per second. So I know what to reference there. And it's got really nice texture to it, which is really cool. And then various leathers, and being able to engrave on those as well. So really happy just kind of like with the variety of material that I've been able to play around with and be able to spin up kind of quick quick things to sell. So I think that's what's super cool about this. Again, like if it's a Christmas show, being able to do some of these with different Christmas logos on them, or having like initials on there. But I think the other thing with the S1 is that it's not super mobile, but it's not unreasonable to consider taking that to a craft show and being able to do any sort of like custom coaster in the moment, especially since most of these take just a few minutes to do. It's something that would be really neat to be able to do fully custom at a craft show with these sorts of things. So I do want to talk about one of the functions that I wish I knew was there early on, especially when it comes to engraving these black business cards, and that's the batch function. So right now we have 3 down, but you could imagine if there was like 30 or that sort of thing down there. So we've already set the depth. It is important that all the materials when you're doing a batch process are of the exact same thickness, just so that you don't have to change the focus length of the laser. But what's really cool with this, and we're going to use a software to do this, is that we can map out each of these 3 rectangles, throw our logo down, and then do the engrave, and it will do all 3 at the same time. Okay, so now to do this in software, we just need to start our marking. We're going to do rectangle, and you can do multiple shapes with this as well at the same time. So if you're doing stone coasters, you just need to make sure that they're the exact same height. So what we'll do here is we'll just kind of mark these. So we'll go to the outer part. I usually just go like a hair in, mark. Done, and then I can just do end marking, and then I can now just start another one. You'll see them at the top there start to come together. So mark the second one. And marking, and we'll do the third. And also something that I would add when it comes to like marking material is to make sure that you're doing it just consistently on the individual ones, because most of the time you're going to be centering a logo or an icon or graphic or something else in the middle. So now we can end marking. We are done. And yeah, so you see like they're all just kind of very slightly different, but that's totally fine. So now we will bring in our logo. And we can make that kind of whatever size we want. Put it right in the middle, so see how it snapped right in there. So now we're going to do 2 more of those. So there, I think that's good. So now we can go to process. Close the laser, of course. Press start, so we've got the fume extractor on. And interestingly enough, it started with the middle one. And what's interesting is it did about 1/3 of the first one, or sorry, 1/3 of the middle one, and then it moved over to the one over here. Okay, and it's done. So now we can take a look. And this actually leads me to a couple of other tips that I want to share in just a moment, but you can see that all 3 of those business cards are engraved perfectly. It was kind of funny seeing it bounce around each of them. But this is the best way to be able to do jobs like this so much faster, a little bit more setup in the marking of them, but so worth it. So that leads me to kind of the next 2 tips that I actually wanted to share with you, or things that I've learned, and that is using kind of this kind of backing board. The honeycomb is great, but what I found when using things like, if I had thin material like these little black business cards, putting them on, some of like the oils that are on there from cutting wood some of the residue would end up on the business card itself. So I'd always look for kind of a clean spot, and then it just wouldn't be held perfectly and that sort of thing. So what I found was just kind of using like hardboard, so something perfectly flat. And this works for business cards, for coasters and other things, because with coasters, sometimes the feet on them some of them can fall into the middle of the honeycomb, some of them can sit kind of on the edge, and then you're just kind of not aligned perfectly. So you can take the honeycomb out completely and just put it on the base, but there's gonna be a lot of residue on that, even more residue on the base. But yeah, just using a little bit of a backer board like this when you're engraving, not cutting. When you're cutting, you definitely need to make sure that you're using the honeycomb or some sort of riser. But yeah, works really well with things like this. But that leads me to the next thing that I learned, and that is how to clean the honeycomb. So I've cleaned this one twice already. And the main reason why you would have to clean is if you're doing a lot of cutting of wood, there is kind of like the oils in wood and that sort of thing that will kind of build up the residue on here. And it's just not, it's not something that's too bad, but you can sometimes see on the back of material that some of that residue will come off. So I don't clean it often. I think that I probably cut maybe 40 or 50 sheets of plywood before even thinking about cleaning it. And then I probably did another 30 or 40 before actually cleaning it. And the way that I do that, and I'm not going to show you exactly, like I'm not going to show you me doing it, but I use this, and I forget where I read it, but it was something with relating to honeycomb with laser engraving and cutting, and the Dawn Power Wash. So it's like this foamy wash that comes out of there. So what I do is I literally go out and I use the hose and I get this thing wet. Then I spray it with this Dawn Power Wash, let it sit for maybe a minute or two, and then I use these extra wide straw cleaners, and then I go through, yep, hole by hole, just doing that. And the Power Wash and this gets it almost looking new. And I think that that's something that's super cool. The other thing that I'll do is just on the surface, because maybe it gets like 90% of it, but on the surface, I just use a bit of a scrub brush and just lightly go over it. And as long as it's getting the residue off kind of like the top millimeter of each of the little honeycombs on here, you're gonna be in good shape. So that's how I clean this, again, just with the hose, and then I just let it dry really well for a few days, or like lean it up against a dehumidifier, and it cleans or dries out really, really well. So that's how I clean the honeycomb, and I think it's probably one of the better ways to do it. So now I want to show you a couple things in the xTool Creative Space software that I think I wish I knew right away, and I think that I did get lucky getting started with version 2.0. It was very soon after that came out, and apparently it was a huge update over the version 1 editions of the software. So this is right now is version 2.0.117 beta, and so now I want to show you a couple of cool things that I wish I knew about the xTool Creative Space software. And just as I'm showing this, I just wanted to mention that I got very lucky getting started with xTool soon after the 2.0 launch of their software, which was apparently a huge upgrade. But one thing that I wanted to do, and was commented to me in one of my videos, was being able to modify some of the settings for the xTool S1. And when you're connected to it here, this is solely about the connection, being able to select different devices. The actual settings of the device are over here. And there's not a lot that you can change, but it is kind of handy being able to come in here, and you can change the flame alarm sensitivity, whether it stops when moved, the fill light brightness. So it was pretty intense at 100%, so you can adjust that down. The auto adjustment for the air assist, exhaust fan, how long it runs. So I have it set to 15 seconds. Before I got the smoke purifier, it was great to be able to increase this to 30 seconds, but it was a commenter that told me about that. And just really nice to have that. And you can also see some accessory information in there. So the device settings is over here, not necessarily hidden. I don't think there's anything wrong with the interface, but just something to know, and quick access to the user guide as well, which is awesome. Next up, I wanted to talk about the material library. And this is something that is really quite cool, not just with material that you buy from xTool. So like yes, they do have a lot of the material that they sell in here, so you don't have to worry about the settings for it, but you don't have to buy from them. So like stone coasters, I buy those from Amazon, and I can just go in here and select that, and it's gonna have default settings for engraving here. So we can see 60% power and 250 millimeters per second. But I want to go back to wood. So this is 3mm basswood, and we have our item here. And what's super cool, and something that I didn't know about right away, was I would just go in and I would use the defaults that they had, just like the ones up there, and they worked perfectly. So I didn't have to adjust anything. But being able to come down here, I didn't know that you could actually click on this. Then it brings this menu up, and it's going to default to the center one, the kind of the ideal state. But if you wanted one that's a super light engrave, you could select that, and it's going to change the settings over here. If you wanted a really dark engrave that's going to have some burning on the sides, you could change that. So I didn't know that you could actually interact with these, which is pretty awesome. And yeah, this does just look like a photo from one of the examples that they did, but a lot of work goes into getting these. You can see up here, this is for the S1 20 watt. And if you're on a different laser within the S1, it's going to show that. If you're using some of their other laser systems, it's going to show that. So really, really quite impressive that they bring that in. And again, you don't have to use material purchased from xTool by any means. You can often find a proxy. So if I'm doing my ball markers, I just pick the 1.8mm stainless steel dog tag. The final thing I want to show in here is just the material test array. Oh, gotta draw a little thing first. So let's just draw a little square, hold down Shift to keep it square. Then material test array, and I'm just going to choose the default here. But you can change kind of the max percentage and the minimum percentage of power, and then the same for millimeters per second for the speed. Then it's going to fill this in, and it's going to do an entire test array. So while that is essentially the same as what they were doing over here, if you have a piece of material that isn't in their material library, it's really handy to be able to do that material test array and print that on a sample piece of that material. So I use that quite regularly if I'm working with something new. So like glass, for instance, I did that on a couple pieces of glass just to dial in the settings so that I would know for the future. So big thanks to everyone that has made it this far in the video. And I really do believe that this has been the ultimate beginner setup for a laser. It's the combination of the xTool S1, the 20-watt laser in this case, the riser base, the smoke purifier, and then the 2-watt laser, I think really kind of fits that sweet spot. Now, if you are looking to purchase, I would highly recommend one of the bundles that has the 40-watt laser, because a lot of those bundles also include the 2-watt laser, so you don't have to worry about paying to add that on at a later time. So it's a little bit more money to go with the 40 plus 2-watt combo, but I think it is worth exploring. If the materials that I showcased today are kind of what you're looking to work with, then the 20-watt is absolutely sufficient in doing so. But just kind of that, sometimes with the 2-watt coming with the 40-watt bundle, sometimes there's a bit more bang for your buck in that. So we've covered a lot in this video. We've covered a number of things that I've learned about the laser, learned about the software. There are a couple of things that I didn't talk about in this video. One is the maintenance of the laser itself and being able to clean the lens and that sort of thing. I haven't had to do it yet. When I do run into that, maybe I'll put out a video on it. I also haven't talked about the rotary attachment. I will learn that and potentially put a video out on that. And the mobile app is fully fledged. You can update the firmware on this. You can build your projects on that. You don't need the desktop software in order to work with the xTool S1. So it's awesome that the mobile app is that way. And they also sell, so xTool sells these little stickers. You can also just do printouts that can allow you to put those on here and do some layout in xTool, the xTool XCS software, using the mobile app and the camera on your phone to basically become a camera for the xTool S1 for layout. So that's something I've played around with a little bit, and it's very cool, something that I do want to learn a little bit more about, but that's a really cool function. Now, this is the ultimate beginner setup. However, where do I go from here? And I think that my interest in lasers is only going to grow. This is an awesome laser for all the material that I've been showing here. I am considering moving the xTool S1 into the basement, into the laundry room with the smoke purifier, and being able to work on smaller projects inside, because I think that this is awesome. But this is my woodworking shop, and I think that there's part of me that is looking at the xTool P2, which is a CO2-based 55-watt laser, which is going to be more capable when it comes to cutting wood. And there are things like jewelry boxes that I like to make using 1/4-inch walnut, and I think that something like the P2 could be the right tool for me to do some of the layout and cutting and just kind of play around with a more powerful laser with some of the woodworking that I want to be doing. So the xTool P2 is kind of in the back of my mind. I am probably going to build a table over here for the S1, but with the idea that it should also be compatible with the P2 if I choose to go that route as well. So for the beginner, the S1 is the best laser that you can get. The software is amazing. I think that the bundles that xTool sells are great. I will have links in the description below to make those purchases. They are affiliate links, so if you do make a purchase, I'll get a little bit of a kickback, so thanks for that. But yeah, that's my coverage on the xTool S1 for now. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the description below and I'll do my best to answer. And thanks for watching. Bye.